Hello and welcome to the 151st show presented by Loch Lomond Whiskies. It is the Friday of the 151st Open here at Hoylake. The sun has been shining, a little bit breezy, but it's absolutely gorgeous for now. The weekend may be a little different. I'm Marcus Buckland, standing on the first fairway, just in front of one of the 82 bunkers at Hoylake, and we're going to be talking bunkers in just a moment with the bonkers. Sophie Walker, a star of the Ladies European Tour for many years and now a top coach, broadcaster, ambassador. The lists are endless, and even better lists here for Peter Finch, who's a YouTuber, a podcaster, a broadcaster, a coach. This man does just about everything, and you've been live at the range all this week. How much fun has that been?
Yeah, it's been all right. I mean, I've not swore once, and they've not kicked me off air, so I guess it's not been going too badly.
Apart from behaving well, have you had any interesting guests? Got up to anything noteworthy?
Yeah, to be honest, it's been a bit of a weird one because I don't really do that many kind of like interview type things. So to actually be in and amongst all the pros and to get a mic handed to me and say, oh, you know, you're interviewing Rory in 2 minutes is it's a little bit unnerving. But I've managed to hold it together. That was probably the scariest bit though, because I'm on with Di Stewart and she was like leading the interviews, and then she went in there and introduced us, and she was asking some questions I could see her ready to throw to me, and literally all through my mind was just white noise. Couldn't think of anything to say to him apart from I love you, Rory, which I managed to keep in just about. Well, I told him afterwards.
I had that with Colin Montgomery, who was on the show yesterday, my hero, but I think I wasn't too much of a fanboy. Actually, Sophie, your all-time golfing hero or heroine, who would it be?
Oh, it's obviously Tiger Woods, but it was Annika Sorensen in the female game, and a couple of weeks ago I had exactly the same as you, Peter Finch.
I'd be the same with Annika. Yeah.
And normally the in-round interviews, you catch them on maybe the 4th or the 5th hole, so you've got some time to get into it. And they got me to interview her off the first tee shot. And as I walk up to her, she goes, "What, now?" And I'm like, "Yes, now."
Well, you know, you've got to be professional, whoever you're talking to. Should just mention that the last tee off time, 60 minutes past 4 again, went past us not so long ago. So there is an awful lot of golf still to be played. And for the final day's leaderboard, head to the open.com or the official app. And if any stories break over the next half an hour or so, we will, of course, bring them to you. Now, I mentioned that we were going to be talking about bunkers, and be careful here, Peter. I don't want you falling into one. But there was a degree of controversy on day one because there were some noteworthy casualties in terms of huge numbers being racked up, particularly when you were at the face of one of these things. So what has changed today?
Well, first of all, I think it was probably just about the right decision. As much as I'd love to see utter carnage, it was almost getting a tiny bit unfair, because like players were literally just dropping in the back or dropping in the front, and it wasn't that it was rolling near the front of the bunker, it was literally almost underneath the face, and it was just impossible to get out. So what they've done is they've raked it a little bit more, so there's a little bit more of a slope at the front and the back, so the ball rolls a tiny bit more towards the centre, but they've not done it loads. Like, it still will fall in and stick near the side, so it's just getting that balance right.
Yeah, and we heard, I mean, the plan when this course was built, when all these bunkers were put here, I mean, they were to penalise it. And in some courses around the world, of course, you're quite happy to see a ball nestling in the sand. Clearly not at Hoylake. And that's got to be the right thing, hasn't it, Sophie?
Look, bunkers should be penal. It should be a penalty where you might have to come out sideways or advance it 20 yards. But yesterday, if you can imagine, it was at like a 90-degree angle, whereas now it's a half pipe. So if it does hit the wall, it'll come back a couple of feet into a half decent spot, by no means a decent spot. And when you come to an Open Championship, you might see a couple of people having an awkward stance, one leg in, one leg out over 72 holes. But yesterday we saw guys putting it, we saw Rory straddling, Justin Thomas doing the splits like a baby giraffe. That was all on the first day.
Demonstrate for us, please.
Oh no, not. In fact, I'd probably do it in these pants, but no, we don't want that continuously. We want it a couple of times to make it fun, but we don't want to make it unfair. And there were times yesterday that it did become unfair.
Yeah, I think that's key, isn't it? You want to be able to challenge these players, but you don't want two players going in the same bunker and one being right up against the lip and then one being another 3 foot back and actually having a shot out. If players hit it in the bunker, it should be penal, but another player shouldn't be penalised more. It should be fair within that setting, that situation. So, yeah, I think it's just about the right call.
You know what's always a little alarming? When one of your camera operators just walks away while you're chatting. And I think, well, I'd like to think it's not because David was bored with our conversation, but obviously after all these issues in the sand, he's going to head off to the practice screen. He tends to divert to other places as well. He spent an awful lot of time in the Loch Lomond Whiskey Bar yesterday. He insisted that he didn't touch anything from the host. But anyway, we'll get some interesting stuff, I hope, from David. Now, what about the weather? We weren't sure this morning. Paul Eales, when we huddled around the first tee just after 7 o'clock, was moaning about the conditions. But here we are, mid-afternoon. It's been delightful, hasn't it?
I couldn't believe it. We had spots of rain. I had the thermal on, the woolly hat, ready to go and watch Victor Hovland. And I said to Carl, who was commentating with me, as we walked down the second hole, this is as warm as we're going to get. As soon as we get out there by the estuary, it'll be blowing a gale, it'll be freezing. Well, I was absolutely roasting out there. I had 3 layers on and a woolly hat. And I stood on the 9th tee and it was tropical. This isn't the sun that we expected. It certainly is the wind, but that will dry out the golf course. Obviously tomorrow we are going to get that rain, but it means that in what you would say perfect links conditions, 2-3 club wind, sunny conditions, the scoring is still a lot higher than you would expect. But it's been 2 great days of watching golf in some glorious sunshine.
Yeah, which does make you wonder what might happen, Peter, over the weekend if and when the rain arrives and the wind gets up.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, tomorrow looks utterly grim, doesn't it? So if you're out playing in that type of rain, I think we're looking at about 15 mil of rain. So that is quite a deluge to come down. But I think it is spread throughout the day, so I don't think there's any danger of the course being closed. But the course is going to soften up, which is a bonus. But with that rain coming down constantly, 3-4 under is going to be a good score, which I kind of think probably plays into the hands of Brian Harman, because he now doesn't really have to go chasing. He can just hold his position. He can try and kind of knock off a couple of birdies, but really it's up to everybody else now to chase him. And looking at the scores this afternoon, even though the conditions are quite nice, really, no one's pressing him too much.
Yeah, well, he is the man that everybody is talking about. He started his second round at 4 under par. He shot a 6 under 65, and of course Peter, who knows a thing or two, told us just before we began this podcast, oh yeah, he was my outside bet. Why didn't you tell us?
Listen, I have to fully admit though, when the podcast that we do, one of my guys, Jacob, he crunches all the numbers, and there were the usual people to pick from. We had Fleetwood, we had Rory, all the rest of it, but Brian Harman was one of the top 5 picks, and we really couldn't figure out why, but he has quite a good record in the Open over the last few years, and generally around links courses. And there was a few other things about finishing in top 25 of previous events. There was a whole matrix that went into it, which I'm not going to pretend to be smart enough to understand. But
no, well, you're right about his recent rounds at the Open. Bit of homework we gave to Sophie. Pretend this is an exam. Can you remember what he shot in his last 5 rounds at the Open? The pressure's on here, Sophie.
I can remember that they were all in the 60s. Did it start 68?
Yes.
69?
No.
Oh, okay. Well,
68, 68, 66, 67, 65, and of course he finished tied 6th at St Andrews.
there you go. So if he does a couple more in the 60s, he will be the Open champion.
Well, shortly after stepping out of the recorder's hut, the American talked through his round with, live at the ranges, George Harper Jr.
Yeah, played really well, struck it well. When I got out of position, which you're inevitably going to do here, I was able to make pars, and it seemed like when I got some birdie looks, I made them, and then to finish with an eagle in 18 was nice.
Yeah, that's right. There was 4 birdies in a row near the start of your round, and then 12 pars. It must have been an interesting day, and then obviously finishing with a bang.
Well, there's some really hard holes in that back nine. So really just kind of trying to hang on there for a little while. You want to play aggressive as you can, but not, give anything away. And I made some really nice par saves, and then 18, it's a nice win for me. It's off, down off the left, so I was able to try and hit it hard as I could on the tee, and then hit a really nice 5-iron.
How does it feel with a packed house on the 18th green to pin an eagle putt like that?
I enjoy playing over here so much. The fans are so knowledgeable. They've got, they know when good shots. Sometimes you'll hit a 4-iron to 30 feet and everybody claps. It's nice to play in front of them.
Now, it's our fault. We should have looked at his recent scores a little more closely. He did come tied 12 months ago. Have you any concerns that maybe he'll feel the pressure this time around and not be able to take it throughout the weekend?
Not really, no. He doesn't strike me as the type of character that backs up. He's pretty tenacious. So if he can avoid any kind of blow-up holes, which is possible around this course, which is one reason why I think we're not seeing those scores get that low, because there is a lot of danger here. I think the course this year, compared to how I played it in previous years, it feels like a lot harder. They've added a little bit of length, obviously. It's up near 7,300 yards, which for a links course is really long. And if it rains tomorrow like it's forecast to do, it's going to make it even longer. That's the only issue for Harman, because he's not a big power hitter. He relies on his accuracy, and he relies on his, quite frankly, unbelievable putting. Like, he is as good a putter as there is in the field. He's a better putter than Cam Smith this week. The only reason he doesn't really get the plaudits for it is the putter he uses is horrendous. It looks like a brick on the end of a stick, and it just doesn't look nice. But he just rolls the rock so well. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, although Brian Harman wasn't amongst your 65 suggestions to win the Open, I must give you credit, Sophie, because Min Woo Lee was, and he rocked up with a 3 under 68 today.
There you go. He listened, didn't he? One of my 65 picks. Number 47 in the world, Scottish Open champion, flikes a hell of a golf ball. He's just a slight guy, and he's like a rubber band. He can hit this. He's got this 2-iron, 3-iron that he crushes off the tee. Grew up in Perth, Australia. Top 10 at the US Open quite recently, and what Pete was saying, coming into an Open, you don't want to find form, you want to be in some form. His sister is a 2-time major champion, Minji Lee, his elder sister, and like any younger sibling, he wants to replicate what she's done. And I can see him getting a major championship, maybe not multiple ones, but if there is one, it's this one. He's a great player. You've seen him done some on bits on YouTube and stuff like that. He's a good guy. He gave Rick a good go, didn't he? When they played together.
We were chatting to him on the range as well. We did there's like a feature where the guys are getting mic'd up and we could talk to him and like talk through the game as they're warming up and practicing. And he was flushing it. Like, it was middle of middle. And it was interesting what he was saying. He was taking out his 3-wood and having a 2 and a 3-iron in. Because what he was saying is that realistically with the bunkers, when he was hitting drive, he was carrying them, and the 3-wood was kind of putting it in the danger area. So it was
exactly what you'd find on the first.
Exactly. So it was one of the two things. Now, if that's changed or not since, I think, Tuesday when we chatted to him, I'm not sure, because the conditions have changed. I think Minji's actually coming up for the weekend as well to watch.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah,
there's the Evian, which is the major next week, and that's over in Central Europe, and then she'll be playing a couple of weeks in Britain. That'd be nice that she comes and supported him. She's caddied for him at the par 3 at Augusta National as well. Extra incentive for Min Woo Lee to go well.
It's becoming a real family affair. Of course, we've got the Fitzpatrick brothers. We've got brothers here, there and everywhere. Now we've got a brother and sister combination. Somebody else I want to ask you about is Tom Kim. Also shot a 68 today, so he's neatly tucked in at even par, going under the radar a little bit. But is he somebody we should keep a close eye on?
No. If
your honest answer.
If I'm being honest with you, I know he's like carrying a bit of an injury on his foot, and he's just a little bit erratic over the first few days. Listen, he's a great player. Everybody around level par 1 under 2, and they're all capable of making a charge, but he wouldn't be my pick from that group to actually do it.
I followed him in a practice round with Scotty Scheffler, and Scotty Scheffler acts as his big brother out here on tour. And links golf, Tom Kim, he doesn't know very well, and they're on the 17th, the short par 3, and Scotty Scheffler, they do a 5-iron challenge. And Scotty Scheffler says, right, we've got to hit a 5-iron, it's 136 yards, and Thomas Dietrich does it, and then Scotty Scheffler has a go, and Tom Kim looks at Scotty and goes, what am I supposed to do? Like, the lad's never manufactured golf shots. He's a PGA Tour player, he's smashed it on the Asian Tour. This type of weather he's not used to, and tomorrow I don't think he'll like it.
I mean, I'd absolutely love to be wrong, by the way. I'd love it if he came through, but yeah, like Sophie said, he's going to need some more
Another
experience.
guy that's not too long off the tee.
No. Well, if you have a look at the whole leaderboard, there's a lot of plotters on there, and that maybe just speaks to the type of course that we're playing here. Honestly, it's the strategic nature of Hoylake, I think, has come to the fore more this year than perhaps in previous years.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good challenge, and the players are, apart from the bunkers, which a few have had a moan about, the players are actually really warming to it.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised. Sophie mentioned Scotty Scheffler, one of the later starters. Jordan Spieth was certainly looking terrific during his front nine. Don't forget, for the final day leaderboard, you can get all the information on theopen.com and via the official app as well. But I think we're going to have a lot of very interesting names and some surprising names, certainly in contention, going into the third round. Now, a couple who fell away a little, Emiliano Grillo. It's there's too many L's in that name. Double bogey on the second set him back. Difficult to regain your momentum after that, isn't it?
He didn't look very happy on the range. He was one of the first ones out. He had 4 layers on, a bobble hat, a schnood. To be honest, I turned up at the range and I was like, whoa, this might be a bit of a tricky morning. In all fairness, though, he had a rough start, but he managed to stick around. I think that's the key. Like, if you have a double bogey early on, it can be quite easy to let the round slip away. So he was able to stick around, and yeah, I'm not saying he's going to win by any means, but at least he gave himself a chance moving into the weekend.
Yeah. Adrian Otegi was looking good until we sent Raymond Burns out to watch him, at which point he promptly dropped a couple of shots just to drift away, although he's not completely out of contention at this stage.
Well, first thing this morning, Adrian Ortega, he had his t-shirt on. Everyone else was in those 4 layers, and he's from San Sebastian, North Spain, a little bit like John Rahm. So this type of weather he was fine in. And then the sun came out, and Raymond went to watch, and it all went wrong. But I just think it shows what this golf course can do to you. You can be going quite nicely, and it just eats away at you, and once you make 1 bogey, 2 bogey, I saw it with Victor Hovland today, there's some real tough stretches in this golf course, especially heading into the back 9, and if it's not the stuffing out of you, by the time you get to 15, which is the downwind par 5 where you're thinking it could be birdie or eagle, you're tired, you're beaten up, you're on the ropes and you can't get off them, and then you're making pars or even forcing it and trying to make a bogey, which is exactly what Tony Finau did. He needed to make the cut, he finds the bunker off the tee, and they're so penal, you're not getting to the greens in 2, sometimes not even 3.
Yeah, now talking of up and down rounds, Max Homa started the day at 3 under. He had 5 pars, 6 birdies, 6 bogeys and a double bogey. It meant that he finished the day at 1 under.
Yeah.
Typical round in your career?
No, I was a bit boring and steady. I didn't make too many birdies or bogeys. But Max is... I followed Max yesterday, and I thought he played great. From 185 to 200 yards, his approach shots were phenomenal. And we were walking down the back of the 16th green today, walking with our group down 18, and Homer just flushed a long iron for well outside 200 yards, all over the flag, and it just ran through. And I don't know if he dropped a shot on 16 or not. We didn't actually get to see the putt. But he's hitting it nicely, and the fact that he's made all those birdies, I think, is significant, because that shows that he's playing well. And for the weekend, look, he needs some decent results in majors. The no laying up boys are giving him quite a lot of grief by saying, when is this going to happen, Maxie? You've won on the PGA Tour now. Can you only win in California? What about the west coast of England? Can you win there as well?
Yeah, well, as you say, he's not out of it. He's at -1. Now, forgive me for looking down at my notes here as we come to Tyrrell Hatton, who has finished at +2 and finished with a horror hole, the 18th. The first tee shot sliced right into the out of bounds. His provisional ended up in the same place. Then his third tee shot smacked way left, took 2 shots to reach the green from there, 2 putted on the green, quadruple bogey 9. And that's not the first 9 we've seen.
No.
JT had one of those last night. In fact, in a period of about 20 minutes on Thursday evening, JT and Phil Mickelson, between them, I think, had 17 shots on the 18th hole. But for Tyrrell Hatton, probably a good idea for everybody to leave him alone for a few hours after that.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, to be honest, it's tough, isn't it? Because obviously having a 9 for a Tour Pro, it's not a great look, but it can happen quite easily. I mean, as Sophie was saying, the actual closing stretch of this hole, like 15 to 18, there's so much that can happen. Like, there's no score that is going to be safe. Like, you could head quite easily into 16 with a 5-stroke lead and not win this event, which is why it's going to be exciting. Like, 15, yes, you can make a bird, you can make it eagle. 16 is a tough par 4 back into wind. 17 could literally take your soul, and then 18, if you're not feeling a straight drive and you are leaking it a little bit off to the right hand side, that out of bounds looks so close.
Yeah.
And you know when you watch Augusta, so this year at the Masters, John Rahm gets through 15 and I turn the TV off and go to bed because it's like, well, the last 3 at Augusta, they've got through that tricky stage, and couldn't be more opposite here. You've got that eagle chance on 15 if the wind does stay the same, and then like you said, Pete, the last 3 holes can be so brutal, and you might not even hit a bad golf shot.
The drama as well is, obviously you got JT, you got these players making a 9, you got Harman today making an eagle. So it is possible to actually make a really good score. We've had a hole-in-one at the 17th as well. There's so much that can happen. Honestly, as far as like a dramatic finish goes, this could be the most dramatic Open that we have.
But if you have a 2-shot lead stood on the 18th, you're hitting it so far left down the first.
Just hit it. I made a 7-9.
You are hitting it here, right
6.
here.
Par 6, easily. Well, you can actually
Matthew Jordan did that. Matthew Jordan made a double on 17 today, and he stood on that 18th tee box and hit it over the ice cream and mac and cheese, basically to the first green, as far left as he could get, and then played it that way.
And then played it straight down. Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad way to go. The actual rough down here as well, it kind of grows towards the green. So even if you find a little bit of squiffy lie, you should be able to get a flyer and chase it. It's the problem with the 18th as well. You got that out of bounds on the right of the tee, and it just carries on all the way down the right hand side.
Oh, yes.
Like for a little slicer like me, it's terrifying.
No, well, I'm sure no one is going to turn off their app, or however you're listening to us on Sunday afternoon. Of course, we'll have live coverage from 9 a.m. Saturday and Sunday. Roars in the background. Oh, you always want to know exactly who is it? What have they done? What about
a Tommy roar.
That sounded a bit
It
Tommy-esque.
is a Tommy roar.
Yeah.
Oh yes, it's on the monitor. Tommy, who
Four
dropped
under.
a shot
Tommy's
early
back to
on
4.
today, and obviously dropped another one since then, but back to 4 under, so he's hanging in there. We were asked, we got several emails this morning about what's his hair looking like. Well, it's like the lion's mane, as always. Nothing changes with regards to that. What about Rory McIlroy? Was that another typical sort of major round for the Irishman today?
Yeah, nearly, but not quite. A couple of missed putts and opportunities that if he's going to win it this weekend.
Hang on, sorry, but you know, David, if we ignore him, he'll get upset.
I just thought it was Pete Finch's fan club.
Well, no, we've had to lock that individual away for the next couple of hours. Yeah, hello, David. Carry on. Get better shots than us, surely. Sorry, Soph.
What was I say? Oh, Rory McIlroy.
Rory, 1 under.
1 under. Anything under par going into the weekend, be delighted with, and he'll feel like he left shots out there over the past couple of days, and maybe the likes of Brian Harman won't feel that. He feels like, I played great and this is where I am. Rory will have the opportunity to hopefully hole a few more putts, but he was playing behind our group today, and especially on this first hole. We're on this second tee watching our group, and Rory's ball just is colossal down this first fairway. He's hit it 20-30 yards longer than anyone else in our group, and we had Victor Hovland, who is a big hitter. So if the driver behaves the way it is, he just needs the putter to warm up, and we're in for another Rory McIlroy big weekend. And I think at majors, that's what we've been saying a lot. He's had himself in contention. He was a final pairing obviously at St Andrews. He was in the final pairing, second to last pairing at the PGA and the US Open. He's up there all the time now, and that's all he can ask for, just to be in the conversation on a Sunday afternoon. And the weather tomorrow, it's not Rory weather, is it? That's where I'm a bit worried about.
The only thing you say with the weather tomorrow, because it is going to soften up, that will play into
I
his.
don't like the rain though.
He'll play into his hands
Come
as
on,
far
he's
as
tough
carry
enough
distance.
to deal with a bit of
goes.
rain,
Okay,
Sophie.
Yeah, you know, you got Harry Diamond. He knows how to operate an umbrella. He'll keep everything dry. But I think with Rory, I mean, the way he's actually struck it, his left shot's out there, but he's actually made some really good saves as well. Like it's not been vintage, but we've almost got to. I think the guys chasing Harman have almost got to ignore him a little bit and just trust that he may come back to them. Like if he goes out there and shoots another low round, then he's definitely got 1.5 hands on the jug. So they've just got to go out there, try and get around what you're looking at 6 to give themselves a chance, and then hope that Harman comes back.
Yeah, and as you say, those last 3 holes Sunday, he could still have his 5-shot lead, and it might not be enough for him. So it's going to be fascinating. David's back. I know if you're listening only to the podcast, you'll start to get a bit confused. But David, he's got this really jazzy camera, and if you haven't seen our first couple of podcasts, do check them out via your usual provider. It twirls, it tweaks. I mean, it does all sorts of things. It even makes me look okay. So it's got to be a magical thing.
It's got a filter on it.
All right,
that's it.
that's enough. No need for that. Rory knows what it's like to hoist the claret jug above his head here at Hoylake. So does he think he is going to be in the mix again?
I might be 9 back, but I don't think there's going to be a ton of players between me and the lead going into the weekend. So depends what the conditions are tomorrow. Obviously depends what Brian does as well. So right now it's not quite out of my hands, but at the same time, I think if I can get to 3, 4, 5 under par tomorrow, going into Sunday, I'll have a really good chance.
Always like listening to Rory. Going to enjoy watching him over the weekend, whatever happens. Before we do anything else, Al, our producer, he's very caring, and he's worried. He's worried that you're going to go flying into that bunker and never reappear. So
well, we do seem to have edged ever closer to it. I mean, again, if you are watching this rather than listening, we are stood in. To be honest, I think this is what makes the bunkers at Hoylake really interesting, because the actual collection area starts about 6 foot right of where Sophie's standing. So even though it's only a small bunker, the actual area that the ball will fall into it's much wider, or people will fall into it is much wider.
By the way, Maureen Medill, wonderful commentator who's with the Open Radio team this week, described the riveted faces as like chocolate fudge cakes. Is that a good comparison?
I go a wafer.
I mean, all I said, if that's her idea of a chocolate fudge cake, I'm not going round to hers for tea.
Do you remember a Time Out?
Oh yeah.
Time Out,
Timeout's a good show.
Yes.
But all of those things are quite pleasant. That's not pleasant, is it?
No.
It's like
other chocolate bars are available, by the way.
Yeah, it's like a fudge cake that might have been left out for like 6 months. It's gone a bit stale.
Yeah.
And you don't want to go near it.
Come on, Maureen, up your game when it comes to your
Bit
comparisons.
like Marcus.
Oh,
I do have this childish urge to throw somebody into a bunker, and it's not going to be you, Peter. Now, John Rahm played with McIlroy today at +2, bogey on the 18th. Steam was coming out of his ears after his first round. Got the putter going today, but it never quite seems to happen for him just at the moment.
Well, obviously, at the beginning of the year, and he lights out golf. Won a green jacket, and everyone's like, well, he's going to win all 4, isn't he? And it's just cycles in golf, and that was where he was at his peak. We saw him dominate last year as well. He's a brilliant golfer, and maybe we get carried away with the last champion. So now everyone's Wyndham Clark, and Rory McIlroy wins on Sunday, and suddenly he's in our minds for the Open Championship. Rahm's not played a lot of golf this year. He played Travellers, missed the cut. He's not missed the cut in 2 years. He's only played about 6 PGA Tour events this year. It's not a lot since Augusta. So he's coming in maybe slightly undercooked. I don't think you can play this course when you've not had a scorecard in your hand for a while. Like Pete's saying, it's very strategic, and there might have been just a touch of frustration out there, because many people said if it gets firm and windy, this is the golf course for John Rahm. Like, Rory needs it to be a bit damp. We didn't have that. This is set up ideally for John Rahm. I mean, the way he was striking his tee balls earlier in the year, he was on a rope at 320. Mm-hmm. And it's just not quite happened for him so far this week.
In terms of, sorry, I was going to say, Peter, just in terms of that scheduling, why has he decided not to play too much?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's had really any injury issues, so I don't really know. But I think with this, like, let's be honest, Tiger kind of ruined it, didn't he, for everybody? Because Tiger, when he was in his pomp, when he was playing in his best, he won all the time. It was expected that he won all the time, and everyone's searching for the next Tiger, where it's just not going to happen. You know, at the top of the game now, we've just got several exceptional golfers who, like Sophie said, are going to go through cycles. Like, it's impossible to be winning every single week. The only player who could be winning every single week at the moment is Scotty Scheffler, but he literally can't putt. So if he was to actually get something that worked, like if he had Brian Harman's putting, he would have won 14 times this year.
Yeah.
So it's unfair to kind of expect these golfers to be just going out there and dominating. It just doesn't happen like that anymore.
Actually, I don't want David to go away because, and again, this will not be great if you're just listening to the podcast, but you've got a bit of a John Rahm beard. I mean, is your facial hair inspired by the great Spaniard?
I wish my golf was inspired by him. No, this is me just. Well, I can't shave. Like, if I shave tonight, it'd be back like this in the morning. So it just stays like that.
Because he's been on the range since 5 a.m. every morning.
I'm going to go for the John Rahm dad bod. That's what I'm kind of really going for.
Yeah, but I mean, with the beard, you just got to build it up a bit, haven't you, over the cheekbones?
Yeah, it just looks a bit sketchy up there. I don't know why. My cheeks don't like hair. Like, the rest of my face loves it, but my cheeks reject it.
I tell you what, while I ask the next question, Al, whose phone I'm using, I didn't want to be a Luddite with bits of paper. It's locked me out, so if you could just do something with that. Victor Hovland, even par today. You followed him around. What's the verdict?
He got it going. He got it to -3 and was hitting the ball beautifully well and had a string of bogeys. He had 3 bogeys in 5 holes, and I was saying about that bit around the golf course can really hurt you. The 12 and 14, they're dog legs from right to left, but the wind is pumping from left to right. The same on the 13th as well, and he was pushing it all day long. He was taking on these bunkers. So the first few holes, we kept looking up, me and Carl, who was commentating on him, thinking he's only 3 yards short of that bunker, or he's just snuck past that bunker. And then eventually he started to find them. But you kind of have to go after this course a little bit off the tee, else you stood there with 240 in. He came back well. He had a good eagle chip actually on 15 that nearly went, so he made that guaranteed birdie there. And then down 16, he hit the most wonderful long iron in there. It fizzed. It didn't look like it went any higher than my head height as it went past me. And you thought...
Very low then.
Yeah, very low. Very through the wind. And then he drops well, not a silly shot on 17, but just a floaty shot in there. It was whenever he made a bogey, he did come back with a birdie. He's not played himself out of it. And this guy is brilliant. We were talking about how Scotty Scheffler is dominant, really. But in the last 4 majors, he's -27 to par going into this week.
Crazy.
Only second to Scotty Scheffler. He's been up there in all of the majors. He's absolutely flushing it, and there is only a matter of time. And if there is a question mark, it's always been around the green, and here you're either in a bunker or you're putting. So that would play into Hovland's hands.
Yeah, okay, well, a mixed day for him. Cam Smith, the defending champion, out late. So again, go to theopen.com or the official app to find out how he got on. Patrick Cantlay made a horror start, so he was playing catch-up almost from the word go. Likewise, Christo Lamprecht, the South African amateur who led the way with his 5 under yesterday, but it kind of went off the rails almost from the word go. And it must be so dispiriting in a way, Peter, when you've got your name up in lights, everybody's suddenly talking about you. I mean, you're 6'8", so you're dominating the place anyway, and almost from the word go today he was stumbling backwards.
Yeah, listen, I don't think anyone realistically expected him to stay at the top of the leaderboard. Like him,
maybe for a bit longer.
Yeah, 2 holes. But no, I think for him, yesterday was a little bit of a free hit. There was no real expectations. Yes, he's the amateur champion, but everyone's looking at the big professional players. But last night he would have had to sleep on leading the Open. Potentially not sleep on leading the Open, and then come out here in a position that he's never been in. It's going to make people uncomfortable, and to see him kind of fall back, it's unfortunate but not unexpected. And I don't think he's going to be too. I don't think by the end of the week he's not going to be gutted. If he makes the cut and he wins the silver medal, it's been a fantastic tournament.
Yeah. Well, talking of the cut, of course, it's still a bit of guesswork for us, but as we record this podcast, it looks as though it's probably going to be +3, somewhere in that region, in which case Colin Morikawa, champion from 2 years ago, is not going to be here at the weekend. He birdied 18, but at +4 he's fretting about his hotel room just at the moment.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't know if it'll go to 4 or not. Like where we're stood at the moment, it's out of the wind, and it still feels windy here. As you get out there onto the back nine, it's really, really windy. But at the beginning of the week, we spoke about what this golf course suits, and nobody said anybody that hits it from left to right. Just because coming down that back nine, the wind is from the west, and it's a horrible wind to go at when you've got a left to right shot. You need to be able to hold the ball up from right to left, and Colin Morikawa hits a fade, a very reliable fade. We've seen Dustin Johnson struggle this week as well, and I was out with him yesterday and just didn't look the golf course for him.
No. Well, he's hanging around hoping. Tony Finau's probably at the airport by now. 6 over. Justin Thomas 11 over. Now he has been struggling for a while. Peter, can you put your finger on what has gone so wrong for JT of late?
His ball striking's just dropped off a cliff is pretty extreme. I'm not going to say that, but it's definitely not to the standards that he would expect of himself. His short game's very good. His putting is a little bit hit and miss, but kind of looking at JT's demeanour on the range and from what other people are saying, I think it's a little bit more kind of mentality at the moment. He just doesn't feel like his game's in the right place, and that's feeding through. But we're talking about a player who literally won a major last year. He's not. This isn't him kind of like signing out professional golf. He'll be back. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Every player goes through a spell where they're not playing well, and his just seems to be lasting throughout this season. I don't think anyone should be too worried about him.
No. Well, form is temporary, class is permanent. And talking about the ups and downs, Sahith Theegala had a shocker yesterday. Today he shot a 68. Won't be enough at +5, which is a shame. I've got a couple of young friends who are massive Theegala fans. There's something about him. I wish he was going to be here for the weekend.
Links golf is so unpredictable. It shows like yesterday yesterday on the range when we were watching him, he was hitting it unbelievably well. Like honestly, flushing it every time. Bang, 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 bang. I was like, well, like when he goes out, let's watch out. He's going to shoot a good score. Yeah. Obviously, has an absolute shocker. This morning, his warm-up with his driver consisted of a snap hook into the car park, a sky, and then a slice. And I was like, whoa, this boy's going to shoot in the 80s. And there he goes, shooting a 68. So, it just shows what can happen when you actually go out on the course.
Yeah. So, in other words, don't bother practicing.
Oh, it's a waste of time.
My approach has been vindicated.
Car park golf swings. The best thing actually is to go in a net, because then you can put some swings on it, get warmed up, and everybody hits it good from 5 yards, don't they?
It goes relatively straight, hopefully.
Well, listen, thank you very much, guys. Have you noticed that Peter's back in front of the bunker?
You guys are rolling downhill. That's
what it's like here. The bunkers, they're like magnets.
Will we be thrown off the course if we throw him in? I mean, it's not a good way to treat
Wait
a
a
guest.
minute. There's a camera apparently in 11 of the walls' faces here, but there isn't one there, so we're not doing it here.
You survived because there's no camera.
To be honest, I half expected when I turned around then to be shoved in the back. I thought that was a classic distraction tactic.
Well, listen, Peter Finch, thank you very much indeed, and there'll be a lot more from you live from the range.
Yeah, thanks
throughout the weekend. And Sophie, I'm delighted to say there'll be a lot more from you on the Open Radio from 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. That is it for Friday. Don't forget, for the final leaderboard and the cut, well, go to theopen.com or the app. Tomorrow is moving day. Traditionally, we'll be back to round up all the action after players finish, so make sure you subscribe to the Open's YouTube channel. You can see us in our full glory. But for now, from me, Marcus Buckland, thanks for joining us for the 151st show presented by Loch Lomond Whiskies. Woo, yeah! Well done, guys. Thank you. Oh, I wish. If only.
Guys, we nailed it. Oh my God, I love it.